Welcome to Somerset and the Mendip Hills. Coming up, the Christian roots that help make Glastonbury a magnet for today's spiritual seekers. The man who returned to his old school as headmaster and monk, and I meet the bishop whose swans ring for their supper. Welcome to Somerset and the Mendip Hills. Coming up, the Christian roots that help make Glastonbury a magnet for today's spiritual seekers. The man who returned to his old school as headmaster and monk, and I meet the bishop whose swans ring for their supper. The land of the summer people is how Somerset gets its name, and in summer it's certainly a place of peace and plenty. The northern boundary of the county is formed by the Mendip Hills, which run from near the town of Frome in the east to the Bristol Channel in the west. This is one of the area's most spectacular features, Cheddar Gorge. It's over a mile long, its cliffs are taller than a dozen double-decker buses, and it splits the Mendip Hills from top to bottom. The Mendip region includes England's smallest city, Wells, and Glastonbury, one of the country's best-known sacred places. Shrouded in folklore and legend, it's been a magnet for travellers throughout the ages, who come here to ponder the mystery and beauty of creation. is Glastonbury so significant to Christianity?
Legend tells us that Joseph of Arimathea came here after the crucifixion with some missionaries to evangelise England. They would have arrived here by boat because this was then an island, and they would have walked across the top of this hill towards Glastonbury. But when he arrived at this point here, Joseph is said to have leaned on his staff and pushed it into the ground and said, "Now are we weary all," which is how the hill got its name, Weary All Hill. And this staff grew into a tree here on this site. While Joseph was here, he set up the first Christian community in this country, which is on the site of where the Abbey is today.
But he might have come here before that, mightn't he?
Yes, legend does tell us that Joseph was in fact a rich trader and came here trading lead, which was mined on the Mendips, which are behind us. That he could possibly have brought Jesus when he was a boy, and that they were wintered here, in fact. So it's quite possible that Jesus actually walked on this very ground that we're standing on. And it's this that inspired the hymn Jerusalem to be written.
And it was fit in ancient time, walk upon England's mountains green, and was the holy Lamb of God, on England's pleasant pastures seen, and did the countenance divine shine forth upon the hills, and was Jerusalem builded here among those doves that hanging
Helen, why do so many different types of people come to Glastonbury?
It's always been a place that's been surrounded with mystery and myths and legends, but more recently people seem to be coming here because they're looking at other forms of spirituality, and they're coming here to look at different aspects of what is known as New Age, which is really a very broad term for a number of things. And really I think it underlines that although we live in a materialistic society, people are beginning to realise there is a spiritual dimension to life, and they're looking for that. And somehow these people are perhaps nearer to us than a lot of Christians realise.
The legends are really inspiring, but does it really matter whether they're true or not?
I think it's interesting that they might be true, but the fact is that Jesus was here when this was created, and that he is here today, that he wants to impact people's lives today, and he wants them to find him as the way and the truth and the life, and he wants to give them his love today.
when the like my ransom, shed for me his precious blood. Who his love will not remember? Who can cease to sing his praise? He shall never be forgotten through heaven's everlasting days. On that mount of crucifixion, fountains open, deep and wide, through the floodgates of God's mercy, flowed the vast and gracious tide. Grace and love like mighty rivers poured incessant from above, and heaven's peace and perfect justice kissed the guilty world in love, kissed the guilty world in love. La da da, la da da.
Nestling at the foot of the Mendip Hills is Wells, which, because of its magnificent cathedral and population of around 10,000 residents, qualifies as England's smallest city. If you wander around the cathedral precincts with a guidebook, you'll discover Vicar's Close. It's the oldest continuously inhabited street in Europe. It was built in the 14th century by Bishop Ralph of Shrewsbury to house the men of the choir. Apparently, he wanted to keep them away from the temptations of the town. But by far the most impressive house in Wells is this, the Bishop's Palace. It looks more like a castle than a bishop's home, and in the grounds are the springs or wells that give the city its name.
There you go. The pace of life is very gentle here. Even the swans in the palace moat ring the bell when they're hungry. Anyway, I'm just glad the bishop's up to meeting an actress in his back garden.
Bishop Jim, this looks more like a castle than a palace. Why is it so fortified?
Well, it's a bit misleading, really, because it wasn't really built for battles. It was built to keep the cathedral staff at bay, because the bishop was trying to assert what was his area and what was their area. So it's more for that purpose.
What do you hope that visitors take away with them?
People come, I think, not just because they're looking at a monument. They come because they're looking. They go to cathedrals not just because it's a great historic building. It's because they're looking for God, we hope. And we hope there are things around that just encourage them to search their own inward self.
And how did you end up here?
It's a long story becoming a Christian for me, but I was converted in a graveyard after a serious drinking bout on Christmas night. So I don't know that that's very conventional, but it was for me the thing that changed my life. And you know, although I go through dark periods, as everybody does, there's no person I think who just lives on a cloud nine all the time. Nevertheless, I do have a sort of assurance that God is in command of my life, and that he brings to it everything that is worthwhile.
The fortifications here are very strong, but you're not going to be pulling up the drawbridge too soon, are you?
No, in fact, we want the drawbridge to be down because we're a great believer. I'm a great believer, and so is the church, I think, increasingly a believer, that we have to be open to all people and to all experiences, and we don't want either the doors of the palace or the drawbridge of a church building to be up. We want to be as welcoming and as loving, because that's what we stand for, is the fact that people are loved and cared for by God.
This part of Somerset really is the land of plenty. You can eat the cheese that's made here till the cows come home. And believe it or not, the weather is so kind here that the grapes rival the vineyards of France. Peter, why is this such a good area for growing grapes?
Well, it's the south of England. As you can see, it's a lovely warm climate, south-facing slope, clay over limestone, the geology's good.
But isn't it a bit of a risky business making wine in England?
Well, they didn't think so in the olden days. There were 3 vineyards mentioned in Somerset in the Domesday Book, and as long as we concentrate on the right type of wines, like dry white wines and sparkling wines, we can make wines the equal of any in the world.
Jesus said, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Anyone who dwells in me, as I dwell in him, bears much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing."
I heard the voice of Jesus say, "Come unto me and rest. Lay down, thou weary one, lay down thy head upon my breast." I came to Jesus as I was, weary and worn and sad. I found in him a resting place, and he has made me glad. say, I am this dark world's light. Look unto me, thy morn shall rise, and all thy day be bright. I looked to Jesus, and I found in him my star, my sun. And in that light of life I'll walk till traveling days are done.
Downside Abbey lies in the heart of the Mendips, and alongside the church and monastery is the Roman Catholic public school of Downside. A member of the Benedictine community and the school's headmaster is Father Anthony Such.
I was sent here as a boy by my parents, 5 years. University, 3 years, up to London to become a chartered accountant. Lived a fairly good life, lived in a mews house and all the thing. Began to feel the spiritual side of me wanting a little more, ill at ease with what was going on. Came down to see my old housemaster and various monks here who were friends of mine. And they said, why don't you try it for a few months? Still here, 21 years later, I think.
Did you find it difficult making that transition?
I think any transition from one thing to the other is difficult. But I was beginning to feel ill at ease, and I have, and I still do. I've given up something that, I bound to miss. I loved my life. I still love my life, but I loved it then. Weekends, friends, anything like that, going out to a marvellous restaurant. Those marvellous moments when in the middle of the night, you change the world with your friends over a jolly good bottle of this, that and the other, eating. All that has gone to a certain extent, but in its place, I've got something that I want and I love, and I hope I'm doing well and being called. The daily routine, which in a world that likes sensations can seem restrained and restricted, but I personally see it as a way of getting into a routine so you can free your spirit, you can free yourself to learn to respond to God. I think the most important way of transmitting anything is example. Here we have a community, not all the monks are involved in the school, and it's a daily routine of prayer life, and they're remarkable men. And I think the boys see it, and they see what faith can do. But also the other thing, we've been given this great gift of life, and we've got to live it in abundance. We've got to live life. I try and get them to learn what living means, not surviving, not running away from it, not hiding, not crab-like, but just living life. Because whatever the pain or the ecstasy, God's there, and he's in there.
God, you search me and you know me. All my thoughts I open to your gaze. When I walk, when I down, you are before me. Ever the maker and keeper of my days.
May the living Christ bring his colour into our lives.
May his light shine on every step of our journey.
May his love break down every barrier between people.
And may his peace fall afresh on all who open their hearts to him today and every day.
This fascinating part of our country seems to cross back and forth over the fine line between mysticism and superstition, and it's important to know the difference, but we live in such technological times, it's quite nice to be reminded that some things remain a mystery.
Next week, Pam Rhodes visits the Peak District National Park for a weekend of entertainment, music and industry of the past when Songs of Praise returns. But stay with us now for the best of Compass.
Starting tonight, 8:30.
Are you here?
She does like to dress properly, and Songs of Praise is so special this week that I want to make sure that my outfit is spot on. Well, I've already got my frock. That's